This always happens. A show comes out that a majority of people have nothing but nice things to say about. Meanwhile, I find myself yelling into a void about how unoriginal and bland the show really is. This time, it's season 1 of Invincible. Now listen, the show is not actually that bad. It actually does have some merit, but it really only has about 2 hours of good content in 8 episodes, each of which are nearly an hour long. The story of Invincible Season 1 is split between Mark Grayson and his dad, Omniman. The first being a teenage boy whose dad is a godlike superhero that the world loves. Mark wants his powers, but unfortunately, they haven't come. He works at a fast food place, has only one good friend, wants a girlfriend. There's this bully character, but nothing really interesting happens there. He's pretty much just every teenage boy in a comic book ever. Eventually, he gets his superpowers. He begins his training with his dad to become the superhero Invincible. Along the way, he meets other superheroes, fights various villains, nearly dies, gets into a relationship, ruins said relationship, and it all culminates into a climax that I'm sure you've seen the meme. The second part of the story I want to focus on is, well, the more exciting part. Omniman is introduced as this godlike being that comes from an alien race that helps people on other planets. He helps the Guardians of the Globe, think of them as your Justice League or Avengers, from time to time. He can fly across the world in seconds, defeat giant monsters like it's nothing. He also went into a portal and did a complete genocide of an alien race, all because they attacked Earth. But I'm sure you've seen it, so let's get to it. The big twist at the end of episode 1. Omniman summons the Guardians of the Globe and absolutely obliterates them. The problem with this, though, is that the show tries to play it off as if the characters in the show don't know that he did it, when very obviously he did, and for the next 6 episodes, everyone's just gonna try to, pretend that he may or may not have done it and try to prove his guiltiness, when in reality, you've already shown me as a watcher that he did it, so why are we wasting time here? But when Omni-Man finally shows his true nature, we figure out his true origin. It turns out Omni-Man is actually from a planet that values only the strong and has no tolerance for the weak. The weak must be conquered so the strong can stand above. So what is the climax? The climax is a fight between Invincible and Omni-Man, and the amount of destruction that these two cause is truly an amazing fight. You really see the power of these godlike beings. But unfortunately, this is where my praise ends, because in what must be the worst way to end a fight happens. Omni-Man explains to Invincible that fighting him is pointless, because Invincible has hundreds, if not thousands of years to live. So the people around him that he is fighting for will all die and he will be left with nothing. But then Invincible mutters, "I'll have you, Dad." And I lost it. They show a flashback to where Omni-Man cheers Mark on in this baseball game, and they try to show that he really cares about his kid. But the problem is that this flashback is a flashback. Meanwhile, during the entirety of the first season, Omni-Man never really shows this love for his son. To be perfectly honest, he really comes off indifferent about his son. He doesn't really care if he's a superhero or not. It almost feels as though he kind of hoped that Mark would not have powers. That's why their stories feel so disconnected, and I split the story into 2 parts. One part being Mark, and the other part being Omni-Man. But still, somehow, Omni-Man, this 500-year-old alien that comes from a world that shows no mercy and favors the strong, gets his heart to doki doki over his son, and he leaves the planet. And that is how they resolve a fight between gods, is through emotions. The season ends with various side characters showing that they'll be back in season 2 and 3, and I don't think I'll care about them in those seasons. Now to go over some characters real quick. We have Mark Grayson and or Invincible. There really isn't a lot to say about Mark. He fulfills the self-insert character like most default comics. He just wants to help everyone and wants a girlfriend. Omni-Man. Omni-Man steals the show. J.K. Simmons' voice really shines through this character, and it's thanks to him that he really is a success. The anger in his animation and his voice perfectly sell the weight and power behind his actions. The mom is a generic comic book mom to the point where I didn't even remember her name because she is just a mom. Adam Eve is another teenage superhero that has a bit of a revelation. She's a superpowered being that can manipulate matter, and she realizes that she doesn't have to live with her annoying parents or with her betraying teammates. Instead, she builds herself a home and helps people independently. She offers counseling to Mark, but her story really is undercooked. For someone who's so powerful, you'd think they'd be able to help in major fights or be too afraid to use their powers, have some sort of mental illness, sort of like Legion from X-Men. Instead, she's just a side character to support Mark. William Clockwell is Mark's best friend. He is gay, and that is all. Amber is a girl that Mark gets into a relationship with. They break up, still kind of friends, and that is all. Cecil is your generic director of defense. Think of him as a Nick Fury and his agency as a shield. He gets a lot of screen time, but it really doesn't amount to anything. The Guardians of the Globe, they're a ripoff of Justice League, and they die in the first episode. They really don't matter. Eventually, a new team becomes the Guardians of the Globe, but they are just as underpowered and just as boring. And that sums up anyone interesting. There are a lot of side characters, but they really serve no purpose other than to fill time in the 8 episodes. So you must be saying to yourself, wow, this show is really bad. And to that I would say, no. The show is slightly above average. The animation looks amazing during fights and the gore is incredible. But outside of this, the story is generic and the voice acting ranges from perfection to I just want my check. This is a show where you'll probably find yourself on your phone while watching it, only so you can understand the memes or watch the really cool fights. Invincible Season 2 and 3 has to step up its writing and keep its animation on par if it hopes to become Rambling Brother approved.